yes and no. It's helpful in the sense that for a lot of people, including in the Netherlands, that label is the only way for them to get surgery or to get medication, to get hormones. So in that sense, that label is useful because that's a way to pass through the gatekeepers.
It's also a way to recognize that there's a form of hurt, of suffering coming from the difference between the gender identity and the body, and like, so that's also recognition, which is in itself a pretty good thing.
Yeah.
But then,
you know, on the other hand, there's also the fact that it is a label. It's a stigmatizing label for a lot of people, and you know, it's individual to the client, because some clients are very comfortable with using gender dysphoria as a diagnosis, and it's something that they can own very easily. For others, it's a lot more difficult, and then we have to kind of go through it the way that, you know, a diagnosis is just a term that describes a variety of different things that are happening to you. So you have to look at it from this perspective, that it's a holistic term just to make it easier for the doctors and for whoever else to approach you.
And can also really be a relief for some people to have a name to put on what's happening for them. Yeah. But it's true for gender dysphoria, it's true for most mental health disorders when they're diagnosed.
Yeah, because this is what's happening to me.
I mean, it's a whole another, like, a very long debate about that, diagnosis, and is it useful, is the label useful, is it actually hurtful for the clients? And also it depends, like, to go back to that, depending on the culture. Yeah. In some countries it will be really helpful, in others, ew. So...
Yeah, but for us, I mean, we try not to use diagnoses.
Yeah, we're not,
because it's you know, we treat the symptoms. We're not going to go to the DSM-5 and be like, this is what it is, this is how I'm supposed to treat this, this is the one way to do it.
Unless we have a client who really needs diagnosis to feel better about what's going on, we can go with them through what would be a diagnosis process, but it's not the way we work like normally.
Yeah, so we try to approach it now from the perspective of gender dysphoria, but this is your gender, this is the way you identify, let's work with that instead of, you know, looking at the book and being like, well, this is what's wrong with you, because it's not. Patience.
No, I think there's one thing is to try to explain things so that they have a better understanding.
Yeah.
You might also have a cis-het therapist who actually is trained, at least knowledgeable on the questions, and has a read about it. Like, so it's not the same thing as having the experience, but I mean, we work with like cis straight men, and we don't know what their life is, we don't experience what they're but we manage to work with them. So it's all about whether your therapist is knowledgeable and is open-minded. I think that the red flag is when you try to explain something to the therapist and they're dismissive, or they're going back to like theories that are completely outdated. And I know because it happened to me as a client. That was a little bit painful.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the biggest issues for us as the queer community, is to find someone. If we need, say, a gatekeeper, even for you know, for transition, a lot of the times you're going to come across a therapist that you have to go through, who is dismissive of the way you perceive yourself and of the way that you want to go about it. And so, you know, and sometimes you don't have the option of going to someone else. And then it's just, you know, I say be like a broken record and repeat it until they get it through their heads. And that can take years, and that can take a lot of pain, but
I mean, to be honest, if it's just about the gatekeeping thing, play along,
get
your thing, and then you work with someone who knows their thing, and you can actually work.
Because we had some clients who like said things that the gatekeeper psychologists wanted to hear, and then they came to us and be like, yeah, this is bullshit.
So now I've done I'm transitioning. Now I really need to explore what it means to me and know how to rebuild that identity, because like just living as a woman, meaning wearing a skirt and painting my nails, it's not how I feel. Like, okay, we can explore that and understand, see what's going on and work on your story. Post-traumatic syndrome, it's the idea is that when you go through a trauma, whether it's a like full-fledged trauma or something that is just more difficult to deal with, it's not completely processed by the brain, and the memory is not correctly stored in the brain. It's like it has been proven, like with some research and imagery, that like for really traumatic memories, you could see that they were more stored in the amygdala and in the limbic system than in the long-term memory part of the brain. And so that's why then when you have like a post-traumatic symptom, you have the experience of the things coming back intrusively, living through with the emotion as well. So the idea is with EMDR is that you help with specific stimulation to put the brain in a mode that is pretty close to what is called in English, REM? REM sleep, like when you dream, and you help to reprocess the memory. But it's not magical. I mean, it works very well, but it's not magical, so it's like a lot of work before to make sure that you try to get the right memory and stuff. But I think, I mean, one of the, I did the training for two reasons. First, because of my military background, and because if I want to work again with the French Navy on that kind of on the French military in general, I need to be trained, because that's the one therapy that they use a lot. It's cheap, and evidence-based. And also because also in the work with queer clients, we encounter a lot of people who have traumas. So it's interesting to, within like a longer therapy, to be able to address the specific moments and try to help them process them.
And a lot of the times the trauma is not about the specific memory, it's about something else that you internalize from it.
Yeah. So, but it's the whole process. It's not magical. But it works very well for most people. Because I say that and then there's this one person, it never worked for me, okay.
Is it a very difficult process to go for the patient, or is it more like it's a difficult, like when you have the appointment, like that's a difficult hour, or is it like?
It really depends. I mean, you have to go back to some of the memories, but we do it in a way that we prepare patient and I will never do EMDR, especially on a really traumatic thing, with someone I don't have a trust relationship with. They need to work a little bit beforehand to make sure that the person feels safe with me or with the therapist. And then we also we give tools to the patients before starting the actual treatment so that they can go to a safer headspace if needed. But also for EMDR, I'm planning like longer sessions. So if it goes, when we're actually doing the process, so if it goes difficult, we can just take our time. But we never, like the role of an EMDR well done, is that you never leave the client in a state of emotional distress. You always find a way to bring them back to some more comfortable space. The thing is, also what good with EMDR is that you don't have to talk about what you're thinking about. You need to give to the therapist some kind of indication that something is still happening, but you don't need to say exactly. You can focus on it, but you don't need to talk about it, to like say exactly the words of what's going on, describing what's going on, not during the reprocessing phase. So that is really helpful for some people. And it's really interesting because it's really the client who reprocesses. I think that's really just therapists help to prepare the clients and then.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. I was your guinea pig, so it's a very interesting experience.
Not on very deep stuff.
No, it wasn't on very deep stuff, but it's a very interesting experience, and it definitely leaves you feeling a certain type of way. It's quite unsettling, but if the therapist does a good enough job and gives you the tools to deal with it, because the thing is, I don't think you said it, but the reprocessing continues once you leave the session, so sometimes things might come up between sessions, and so you need to really know how to deal with that, because
that's why we do the tools before,
and
we make sure the clients know how to use them and has a way to deal with it. But I mean, I know I've been also, I mean, I did the EMDR sessions to, I mean, it's also part of the training, but also because I always think you have to experiment what you are doing with people, and I was left not at the right stage because I was doing it with someone training as well. And someone was a little bit reluctant with the technique. That was, I don't know what she was doing there. Maybe also because she wanted to, this was a psychoanalyst. And I think she just wanted to prove that the EMDR wasn't working. I don't know. I have no idea what she was doing there, but she was reluctant. And she didn't go deep enough. She stopped at a point where it seemed that I was okay, but actually I wasn't, and didn't really listen to what I was saying in a way, and I also didn't know but I felt horrible till the next session. So I will never do that to a client ever, and it was not even a deep stuff thing. It was very interesting for me to experience it, and then I had like a much better therapist, and it went like, in 15 minutes he had brought me back to a better headspace than it was. So yeah, I told you that I was winning that one.
I mean,
therapy doesn't really work if a person doesn't want to.
yeah.
I mean, it can, but it has. I mean, because you can break through person defenses,
Yeah.
but they really have to be there. Like if the law requires them to be there, it can work. But otherwise,
Yeah, otherwise it's just a matter of, you can't force a person into changing their life, basically. And it's what they do with addicts, for example. They have to enter the pre-contemplation stage when they're kind of considering that something is wrong. The contemplation stage when they understand that, I need to think about changing things. And that is when they transition into action. So a lot of people, they're in that pre-contemplation stage where they feel like, therapy sounds like something, maybe fun, whatever. But they're not committed to it. They're not gonna come there and be satisfied with the process. I mean,
Toxic masculinity, let's call it. But like,
question of the century.
so like on a one-on-one sort of basis, like how do you,
You have to
maybe as
approach it.
therapists, but also as people?
You really have to approach it from a cultural angle a lot of the times. I mean, for example, when I'm seeing Ukrainian clients, I struggle with that because I know what they grew up with, and I know how hard it is to get out of that mindset that, for women, it's like, I have to stay at home, I have to be this, I have to be that, I have to be gentle, I have to be kind, I have to support my man. And I'm like, no, honey, you don't. You really don't. He has to learn to support himself. But
you don't say that like this. So.
No.
Just like to make things clear, she doesn't talk like that to her clients. Like,
I'm
no.
better than that. No, I hope. That is my internal process. Okay. No, but it's a lot of the times, you have to focus on the strengths of that person. So instead of them leaning on their culture, you have to have them lean on something else. And I don't know.
It's about deconstruction.
Yeah.
A lot. It's also what we do when people are questioning their sexual orientation or gender, is that we're going to deconstruct. See, well, okay, what's a belief? What is what you actually feel? What's come from within? What comes from outside?
Yeah.
It takes time. So, I mean, it's kind of the same process. But I have to say that working with queer people is amazing because you have people who have to question themselves. So we can do in my perspective, you can kind of skip a step. Because even if people don't come to work on their sexual orientation or gender identity, just want a queer-friendly therapist so that they don't have to explain stuff, we already have to already question to think about it, to think about themselves. And for whom the whole self-discovery was not obvious. Because that's a reality, something that I realized pretty late in life, is that for some cis straight people, it's actually pretty obvious. They grow up and they just go through their phase and stuff, and they're attracted to their, of course there are struggles, but they kind of fit into what expected enough. They never completely fit, because no one ever completely fits, but they fit enough so that it goes without that much problems until they are 30, 40 years old, or even 50. I have older people who are like, okay, my children are gone, and now I don't know what to do. I can't continue following the steps that I was supposed to follow because my children are grown up now, they're not there anymore. What am I doing with my life? And who am I? Yeah,
and it's kind of amazing also. You see absolutely amazing, intelligent clients, and they have zero insight when it comes to things like heterosexism or toxic masculinity because they never had to think about living that experience. They never had to come out to themselves. They never had to agonize over it at night and cry into their pillow because that's not part of it. But once something happens, something that makes them feel just a little bit uncomfortable in life, that comes up and they are completely lost. And they could have an IQ of 200 and they're still not going to be able to get it without us holding their hands and walking them through this experience. So it's kind of like taking them on a tour of queerness for a little while.
Yeah.
You know, it's very difficult to eradicate that kind of thinking. And honestly, you know, to play devil's advocate, if there weren't different types of thinking, then we wouldn't be a human society. It's very natural that some people would lean more towards that.
But to go from what you were saying
Yeah.
about identity, to understand that when you have that privilege of, okay, there's that part of your identity that's more or less conformed, and in the Netherlands, for being gay white man is, okay, it's not being straight clearly, but it's acceptable enough. So there's this difference. But you might wanna really, really overplay the rest to make it acceptable to yourself. So, you know, you're just, okay, I can accept that I'm gay, so I'm different, but I do belong for everything else, so I am a guy, I'm the guy, I buy into the idea that I have to preserve my national identity. Because, I mean, we're all doing that in a way, like finding stuff to make yourself feel better, to build your identity, to feel valid. And unfortunately, when you are in a situation where you can see yourself in those kind of dominant ideas, or I don't know, nationalism is a bit of a dominant idea, but ideas that make you feel good in a way, because it's simple, easy, you just go for it.
Yeah,
And that's what it is in construct.
And honestly, on an individual level, I mean, if a right-wing client comes into my practice, it's not my job to judge his or her political views. It's really not about that. It's about helping this person. And if I have to tap into their beliefs, then reluctantly, but I will, because that's what a professional does. So it's not up to us to judge them.
No, it's always the ethical question there, but we can't judge them. It's just a company understand what's going on. It's like when we actually do the own deconstruction thing ourselves about what's happening for the client, so that we can understand it in a way that is not judgmental, because that's not like why we're here for.
Yeah, and that's where the countertransference thing comes in, because you know, if you have a client in front of you who you know reasonably, if they knew you, they would want you dead. You have to be very careful about the way you present yourself to that person, but also be at the best of your game when you're working with them. And that's what supervision is for. For example, for therapists, you have to discuss these kinds of things with other peers or with your supervisor, because that gives you an extra perspective and that helps relieve the pressure. Or, you know, have your own therapist as well.
Yeah, it's very useful to have a therapist
and
and supervisor. And like
your therapist, you need your own therapist. In the Netherlands, there is Rosa Hopverlening. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but there is a website. It's quite outdated, but I mean, I signed up for that, so I assume it's still active. There's also Pink Therapy. It's based in the UK. There's a lot of therapists on there who do online counseling. So that's also something that you can look up, and some of them are quite cheap, like around 40-50 pounds per session. So those are the two that we're aware of.
Yeah, I mean there's one in France as well, but I don't really know the people, so I know with Pink Therapy, people are really they come from that movement, like the Pink Therapy thing, like really launched in a way, kind of pioneer of the acceptance therapy, and affirmation, self-affirmation therapy. So generally, like the people on that website are really, really queer friendly and queer themselves. Like with Pink Therapy, you can even choose your therapist.
Yeah, you can choose like a queer or a bi or a gay
and
therapist
gender
search them by that, yeah.
Gender and sexual orientation. That's the thing to be in that directory, that you have to disclose how you identify, so that clients can find someone who has an experience similar to theirs.
Yeah.
Which is a little bit difficult when you're actually trying to select how you identify, but that's another